it happens a lot on the city level as well. You know, in being the chairman of the Financial Audit Subcommittee, you know, I've worked pretty closely along with some other colleagues on the city's audit. So that's been helpful to know, you know, what sort of controls that we have in place or where they lack and how we can improve some of those things. So yeah, there is some correlation to my professional job, but I think that in the capacity on the board, it's trying to generate revenue. It's trying to understand where that revenue is then being spent and how it can be spent most efficiently. So I get to see pretty much all sides of taxpayers' money, and it's pretty interesting. So I just think that based on the conversations that we've had with the mayor and some of his, we want to help with some of his vision. I think that the Board of Aldermen, as many colleagues have said in the past, specifically Alderman Coletti always says, the mayor proposes, the board disposes. Well, that is true. The mayor has to bring his ideas and recommendations and plans forward to the board. And I think that we would be doing a disservice if we weren't putting all those on the table and talking about them. Cheryl and I have been meeting with him each Friday and trying to help him the best way to facilitate some of those things. We have a very, very important budget process coming up. You know, as the mayor is, as you mentioned, going around on his town halls, talking about the deficit, the projected deficit that we face. He's trying to make people in the community aware of that. And I think what we're trying to do internally is try to set up the best way in which he can bring his budget forward and we can get it through the board in such a fashion that it will be clear, it'll have plenty of time for deliberation, and that we will have all of our questions answered with everything on the table. I think that's what how we can be of service. Okay, well obviously you're working as a team, and let's go to Cheryl again for a second. Do you see what Scott was just talking about sounds more of I guess a combination of a collaborative process mixed with a checks and balance type of system? Is that how you see it, or is it something else? In the past, it's kind of been a reactive thing for the board. And you know, we get a budget and we react to it. One of the things we wanted to make sure this time is that it's really a dialogue and it's a collaborative process. So it's you know, the mayor has some meetings scheduled with all of the board, and to get input. So it's not like here's the budget, what do you think? It's like I'm putting the budget together, what do you think? And there are 24 aldermen in this city who have expertise in several areas, so it's good that they have input. And I think it's important that we talk to the mayor before the budget gets there. How much of an area to sort of quote-unquote massage the budget is there? Because if 80% of the entire expenditures in the city are expenditures that we are committed due to contracts, aren't we really only able to play around, so to speak, with the 20%? And if it's not a situation where there will be some type of override, is it unrealistic to think that there can be additional things in the budget, or are we in a position now where each alderman, each citizen that goes to the mayor's roadshow for the budget, I mean that in a positive way, has their own individual priorities? Most people clearly across the whole city are extremely concerned that the school system be funded fully. The definition of that obviously changes depending who you're speaking with. But that clearly is most people in Newton's #1 priority, to make sure that our education system stays superior. So as we're looking at our contracts, as we're looking at the expenditures, are there things that you've seen over your 8 years of experience on the board that are extremely important to you, that you are concerned about but are doing something right now to let the mayor know, for example, that these are priorities for you that you need to make sure stay as part of the budget? Well, I think it's important that obviously we listen to our constituents, and that's what the mayor has been doing with the town hall meetings. But it's also important there's going to be a lot of trade-offs, and keeping services are important. And it really depends. I think we have to look at sources for new revenue. I think we have to look at departments that are generating revenue. And if there are going to be cuts, we have to just weigh everything. And I think at this point, we just have to see what
he's
There's
thinking.
A lot of things I think that Mayor Warren is interested in looking into that I think at the same level the board is very interested in looking to. You know, all the big ticket items, the pensions, the health care. You know, I think the city has really been a leader the last few years in energy efficiency, in trying to do some things on the energy front that may cost a little bit of money up front, but I think in the long run the city will realize some savings from that. So there are things like that that everything needs to be on the table. And I know the mayor he's new. He's got a new team in place. He's looking at a lot of different things. He's kept a little bit of his numbers a little close to the vest. And we're glad that he's going out to the town halls and talking about that. As Cheryl just mentioned, he's got 4 or 5 meetings set up with the board over the course of the next 2 weeks to talk about in a little more detail some of those numbers so that we know what to expect come April 20th when he presents his budget. That's tentatively April 20th. So I think it's important that we have not only a dialogue now, but we have a dialogue year-round as the budget is worked on, and then as implemented.
Is that different than it was under the previous administration?
Well, under the Cohen administration, you know, there had been, the discussion occurred, I guess, more in the Finance Committee, not as much year-round, but, you know, our comptroller, who is probably one of the top comptrollers in the state of Massachusetts, keeps the board very well informed. But there hasn't been that back and forth and really that dialogue that I think some board members are clamoring for. So I think Alderman Lappin and I are proud that in our first 2 months we've also been able to put together a survey for board members to talk about some of the things that they'd like to see the board doing with the mayor and internally. One of those things is to develop a mechanism that we are working with the executive office, board members, department heads, whomever that may be, and the finance chair, on some sort of mechanism to talk about the budget year-round. So it's not the 3rd week in April. So when the mayor is presenting his budget, you don't have 24 aldermen sitting at their desk flipping through the budget book because it's really their first glance at it. We want to have a knowledgeable, well-informed board coming into the budget season, just as the mayor is and just as his staff is, just as his department heads are, so we have a good conversation and deliberation about what's important for the city.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because the mayor has proposed a reorganization of literally the structural aspects, who reports to whom, what departments are under what authorities and all of that. Why don't we, is that something that you can touch upon, or would you prefer to have Scott talk about it? Or
well, it hasn't formally been presented.
Well, what do we think,
but I think
is on the way?
Well, I think
how do we feel about it?
I think the reason for it is.
How do you feel about it?
Is efficiency.
You're the guest.
You're on the board.
You're the guest.
I think the reason. I think the reason that he's looking to consolidate is for efficiencies. And I think there are lots of places in the city where we can do that, where we're duplicating efforts. And again, that's the fiscal responsibility part that I enjoy, is making sure that we're spending taxpayers' money correctly.